Hi. I just noticed that I had the tab open for the YouTube, and I kept hearing the song play back like in an echo, and I was like, "What's going on?" I just realized, hello.
So professional we are always after 50 some odd episodes. We think we'd have it down, but yet we don't. Every day is a new day.
There's always something every Sunday. Hello. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Chill to Action on the Call to Action Network with me, your girl, Danny Joy, hanging out here. Happy Sunday. Welcome with my favorite co-host, as always, Mr. Paul Denuzio.
It's me. It's PLD. Happy to be here as always on Chill to Action. We have a great time here every Sunday now. It used to be Monday, but we're back on Sunday. And I'm happy to have you guys all here in the chat waiting for us as well. And we have some great guests today. Great guests. But before I introduce them, I think I want someone else to introduce them first. If you're open for that, let's just play it.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley sporting an epic beard. And this is a shout out to two Schmoedown legends, Samm Levine and Rachel Cushing. Watch your back, Jericho. I might be coming for you soon. Salute to Call to Action and have a nice day. Yeah.
Well, her legend shouting out to Schmoedown legends. One is a repeat guest, our first of that since Team Action. She's always welcome on our shows and on our channel anytime. And our first time guest as well, living legends indeed, Rachel Cushing and Samm Levine.
Yay!
Hey, it's us.
It's you.
Wow.
Legends.
Welcome, Sam, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us on this Sunday evening.
Thanks for having us. Our pleasure. Yeah.
So the first question we always ask, Danny.
The first question that we always like to ask y'all, Rachel, you've answered this before, but you were more than welcome to answer as well. But Sam, I'd like to ask you for sure, how did you first get involved with the Schmoes and with the Schmoedown?
So there is another podcast hosted by someone who's now in my faction, Mr. Doug Benson, called Doug Loves Movies. And back in the summer of 2011, Doug did a whole bunch of in-studio versions of his podcast where he asked me to host one of his games. And so Mark and Christian were guests on that in-studio show. And that was the very first time I met them, where I was sort of hosting the game portion of the show. And so I got to know them and we all hit it off. And then I remember Christian and Mark both saying, "Hey, this was so much fun. We'd love to have you on our podcast sometime." So I said, sure. And I gave them my info, and then they followed up not long after that. And I came on their old Schmoes Know podcast. And we talked about, some of my acting work and things like that. And then I was happy to go back on, I think, again, maybe a year or so later. And eventually they had me on to play some games, and it just fell into place from there.
Oh, and here we are, full circle now. You got Doug Benson on The Usual Suspects, so it's all come full circle for that. Actually, it's funny. I listened to the Christian Harloff one-on-one episode he did with you, and that was where he said Doug Benson knows movies. Yeah, well, that's the name of the podcast, so that's what he had him on. So that's great, though. Well, my big question then now is, since you were so early on in the Schmoedown, like season 3, the first big match, season 3, what do you think of how the Schmoedown has developed from then to the behemoth it is nowadays?
I think it's tremendous. It is a testament to how much effort and love and time Christian has put into it to watch it grow from this goofy thing they were doing in real crappy studio space that was not even a studio, it was a house, into what it has become the last several years. And in spite of what COVID has sort of made the show look like the last several months, it hasn't stopped growing. It has not stopped evolving, and it's like the Blob. Like at this point, we can't even control it. If Christian wanted to kill it, he couldn't. It's too big for him. It's its own entity. So I'm blown away by how much really the fans. Let's be honest. The base of fandom that has just grown season after season, month after month it's undeniable, and it's pretty impressive. And hi, Larry Lease. It's nice to see you too, my friend.
I was about to put that up there, Larry Lease. Nice to see you, Sam. Thank you, Larry.
Fun comments.
As always. Rachel, how about you as far as now you've stepped away for it's about a year now, just about over a year when you retired.
Yeah, almost exactly, yeah.
So how has it been since you've retired versus now things have gone?
Well, I've always loved that Christian is always trying to find new ways for it to evolve and to grow and to surprise people, to keep the core and keep the people and keep the thing that, all the original fans loved about it, including myself, the trivia being the core of it. But, the slow and steady growth of characters, the slow and steady growth of, the rivalries and the competitiveness and the competitive nature of it. But this season, obviously, you can't talk about the Schmoedown without talking about factions. And, I was a little bit a part of that before it was a thing that everybody was a part of. And I, thought it very much was a huge piece of why I succeeded the way that I succeeded. Having Emma as a manager, having Clark as my partner, having Mark Andreyko as a faction mate, like that foursome really gave, I think, Clark and I the confidence to do the things that we ended up doing, and kind of wished everybody had that. I remember at the time there were players who were like, that's kind of unfair that they had people in their corner to study with, to help with challenges, to be there, to calm your players, work with your players through the matches. And Christian realized that was a huge aspect that was kind of unexplored across the league. And so this season he said, no, this is what we're going to do. Everybody gets representation. Everybody gets a squad, a group of people that they can work well with, or maybe not work well with. That's happened too. Yeah. I think it's really changed the game in terms of strategy, like what Mike has done and chosen to do, and not taking a number one contender match and playing in the tournament. Like that's a fact. That's an effect of having factions. So that's really been a huge thing this season that they're still navigating. There's a lot of stuff that they're figuring out with it, but it's once again, it's like anarchy. It turned everything on its head, kept the core that everybody loved, but also introduced all these new elements that are affecting the game.
Yeah, absolutely. There was whenever the factions were first getting started and the managers were kind of being announced, there was one manager that hadn't been announced by the time Spectacular came around, and there was huge speculation that it was going to be Rachel, that Rachel was going to be the manager that was going to be announced. Everyone was like, it's Rachel. It's obviously Rachel. It's got to be Rachel. So how fun of a secret was that for you to keep, Sam? Waiting until that moment to announce that you are the next manager for this.
It was fun because, the way Christian and I talked about it, he was like, oh, it's going to be great, man. It's going to be like we're giving him a new pope. I was like, I don't think it's going to be quite as big as that. Those are words he used to me. And I was like, let's not overdo this. Like, two people might be happy, but other people would be like, all right. Okay, that's cool. Right on. I was like, as long as it's that and nothing lower than that, I'll be fine with it. It was fun. I'm glad. I guess I'm glad nobody was like, boo! That could have gone.
Imagine.
A little disastrous, but you just turn heel and it's all good. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to ask, Rachel had mentioned how the game has changed strategies and everything else. I mean, Sam, you were pretty much I would think the godfather of the strategy. You really, one of the first ones who really started strategizing with the games. How have you seen, now that all these newcomers are coming on, and the Batemans, the Kalinowskis, the newcomers are just all about the strategy. Do you empathize with that? Or do you like how that's going with that? Or?
Look, I'm always about studying every aspect of a game so that you can learn how to play it better. Or if you physically, if for whatever reason you can't play it better yourself, you can at least teach others. Maybe you lack a particular skill to take full advantage of a particular strategy. And so that for me has been what's wonderful about managing is, there are certain skills that I lack as a player that others do not lack, and they're able to, probably do a little better than I could. So I have great respect for people who take the time to learn strategy, although there is still one strategy that it boggles my mind that not every single player who has the opportunity does not go second in round 2.
Oh, that's it.
For some people, it's just a personal preference.
Yep.
I will never be able to argue with a personal preference. But if you want to talk pure strategy, there is no reason to ever go first.
I happen to agree with that. That's the team action way as well. We followed action for a long time. They have said the same thing. You always play from behind. You know where you stand.
And you're not necessarily playing from behind. You're in baseball. You're still going to get the bottom half of the inning.
Right, the home team.
It's not as if. Yeah, and so that's the notion of, well, you don't want to play from behind. Well, it's not like they're not going to ask you questions. They're not going to remove the option of asking questions. You'll always get your opportunity to put up your own points. So I feel like people sometimes get the wrong idea when they talk about, I don't like to play from behind. Why not?
I think I think it's just the wrong terminology.
Right.
They don't have the right framework to describe it. That's like you said, I still would argue it's a strategy, but it's a strategy based on knowing yourself, knowing how you play in any given situation.
Sure.
So if you know that you're the kind of person that sees those numbers and can't analytically turn your mind to that frame of reference of I still have to go, some people look at that and go, oh my God, I have to get 9 points. How are we going to do that? And that messes with their ability to then answer the questions.
You know what? This is why we're perfect. Allow me to rephrase then, because what she said makes a lot of sense. So on paper.
Yes. If we're all machines.
Particular emotions from certain players and things like that removed on paper, you should always go second.
I agree. That is
emotionally, though, you're right. Because I've had other people say that they go first sometimes if there's momentum involved. They feel like there's momentum involved. They can kind of keep going with it and make it. So then at the end of the day, they're already up, and it's like keep that momentum going. But
and intimidation, I've always heard like it's an intimidating factor going first and then putting up. Like if you know that you're going to do well, or if you feel like you're going to do well, you go first in the second round, put up all of those big points, and it's just basically the annexation of Puerto Rico for round 2. So put that in.
Appreciated the reference.
Little time, right? Yeah, all right, can't get that one past me.
Okay.
It took everything in me to not like write down like Inglorious Bastard like side notes and stuff like that. So, I don't see any of those.
Fair enough. Well, also we mentioned already, like you've been retired from active competition now. What do you, both of you, I'm kind of curious now, think of your legacy in the game? Because you both kind of left on top. Sam obviously retired with the title. Rachel, you lost your last match was the way you gave up the title at that point. What do you think of your legacy now as far as that goes?
That is such a dangerous term, legacy. Okay. So my hope is that after I stopped playing, after I left competition, that if people think of me, they think he was a good player. He was a better than average player. If I could just get that out of people, then I'm very happy with how I left this. Because honestly, when I stopped playing in active competition, I was not really thinking about legacy. I was so comfortable on a personal level with how I had done and what I set out to do for myself in the game. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I had accomplished everything that I wanted to do. And I was very comfortable calling it a day right there. And for me, my own personal idea, or a legacy as we're using the term, I'm fine with it. So as long as it's fine with other people, then that's good.
I think it's more than fine.
Yeah.
What you did. I mean, because at the end of the day, no matter if this goes on 10 more years, you're still the first person to win 2 belts and to do it the way that you did, going through the tournaments. And, you probably had excluding maybe the Patriots, but it's like it's kind of different because they won the titles and then it was just about defending them as many times as they did. What you did, how many matches you played and the amount of time that you played them and how much you won in that like whatever 6-month period, that I don't think anybody had done anything like that before. And so, you know, it's sometimes it's nice to be able to end and say, well, I was the first to do these things. Other people are eventually going to probably do them. Like, I mean, I was not far on your heels getting 2 belts.
No, you were not.
Mike was on my heels, and you know, and so that's inevitably how it goes. And you know, you can argue the Mount Rushmore stuff. The longer it goes, the harder it is to name 4 names because you know everybody's going after being the first to do something. Especially as the league changes too. Right. So,
and also somebody wants to sneak Teddy Roosevelt in there every time. Every time you see a list.
I know. Founding father. Yeah, I don't think so.
Come on. What are we doing there?
Fair enough. Well, I know Rachel's been asked that, but given the legacy now, Sam, now that you've been gone for, have you ever felt the itch to play again?
Ooh.
No, I have
not. Not at all.
I have not felt the itch.
But he does often ask, you know, why weren't those the animated questions asked back in my day? That happens almost every match now. We watch them. He gets the round 1 animated questions more often than not now. And he's like, well, what?
Where were those? Why? Well, I feel like when I was playing, it was like in Toy Story, this character you've never heard of had half a line. It's not even Toy Story. That's too easy. It's like in the Black Cauldron. The frog in it. Now it's like, hey, who's the second lead in Cars? What the hell is that?
I feel like we've all have seen the Schmoedown kind of change and go through, especially like with competitors. I always like to make fun of Ben Bateman because Ben Bateman was always like the first one to say like, who studies for this? Mm-hmm. And then his legacy like down the line is like he's one of the most like in studying, like he studies so crazy. So it's one of the things, I've been a fan of the Schmoedown for a very long time. The trivia is what got me into it, but the strategy and the gameplay is what has kept me in there. And for you all as competitors in this, is that something that kind of always was appealing to you about the Schmoedown, was being able to find strategy in trivia questions?
I think I got there eventually. Like, it certainly wasn't in the forefront of my first season of play, maybe even into the second, you know, probably because I was just too nervous just to be up there trying to answer questions about movie trivia. But it became clearer and clearer that there were certain things that you could do. I mean, whether you call it strategy or just simply recognizing your weaknesses and going, all right, I should probably start looking into those. Like in the early degrees of studying, like we were both part of that. Sam's infamous for having watched 45 animated movies in like the span of 2 weeks or something like that. 45. So, you know, and I did some work in the categories that I needed to work on. And I recognized kind of early on that inner geekdom was the kind of thing where, you know, my knowledge got me through those first couple matches, but I realized that to win, to beat somebody like Hector, who had the belt at the time, and then Jason, that I would have to put in the work on the movies I knew a little bit less. And then I have to say it was when I joined up with Clark, when we realized that there was strategy in, you know, when we always communicated between every round. You know, you connect, like, how are you feeling about this? And we would decide spin first, spin second, based on that. The betting round, we played a lot of 5-rounders. Once you win the belt, that's all you end up playing. So, like, you think about all of those rounds so strategically. Who goes for the 2-pointer? Who goes for the 3-pointer? And also, it's much more talked about now, but I remember when we first got to be teammates, I sent her a Excel spreadsheet of every round 2 wheel slice. And I said, rank them. Tell me how comfortable you feel on these. And I told her what mine were. And we used that to help decide which categories we put on the wheel based on who we were playing. You know, we were originally we talked about, like, we're going up against Mark Andreyko and Jeff Snyder. We're not putting horror up there because we know they're just as good at it as Clark is. So you go for a different strength and you play that. Now people are taking that to a whole other level, like sneakily studying for something nobody thinks that they're going to know, putting it on there and crossing.
I put it in my throat.
No, I didn't.
Sorry.
I thought I heard.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, excuse me.
A drink if you need, Sam. I get it.
I got it. Yeah, I'm gonna take a sip here.
So that is very clearly a strategy now, but it was something Clark and I were doing pretty early on, and I think people were starting to recognize that you could start doing things like that, and it's definitively evolved. And then again, factions come into play where people are starting to share. Like, we didn't tell a lot of people that, but if you're in a faction with a group and you say, oh, I've kind of always approached it like this, and everybody has different ideas about that, and now it's sort of getting out there the other possibilities of how to deal with strategy.
Ooh, that's interesting for me, because now I'm thinking of next season. As far as I can remember, and maybe I need some brushing up on this, but I think that managers are only allowed to keep 3 of the players that are on their factions. So that's just in my brain, because like any of the other players that are in your factions that you've given your strategy tips to.
Sure, no, that's absolutely. There's some people who are playing it very close to their vest, in terms of exactly how they're studying, and I don't know how much they're sharing it with their faction mates or not.
Mm-hmm.
As if anybody's watched Backstage, Bateman's apparently got a foolproof whole new system that he's going to be putting into effect, and next season he plans on winning completely with this whole new foolproof system.
Wait a minute, I know it. Is it watching movies?
That technically does help.
I'll find out. We'll all find out, I guess.
Oh yeah.
That's what Drew said. Drew says Bateman doesn't watch movies. That's what was his big problem. That's what he always said, but you never know.
That's an issue with 5-pointers.
Yes.
5-pointers these days are they're tending to be the plot specific ones, and he doesn't like them because he can't figure out a strategy to get around that. Whereas most of us like them because they speak to the bottom line core part of the show, which is people watching movies, answering trivia about movies. Look, the studying is a huge piece of it, and everybody should be doing that to some degree to be competitive these days. But at the end of the day, it's also about how many movies have you seen and how much do you remember about them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a difference. That's kind of been the difference I've heard talked about between Inner Geekdom and the singles leagues and teams leagues, because there's only that finite amount of movies in Inner Geekdom versus such a broad based category. How did you find the difference between tackling the Inner Geekdom League and tackling? Could you do both at the same time? I know, like, for example, some people have decided I can't do the singles league. Now I'm just going to concentrate on Inner Geekdom.
Yeah, no, I realized so my second year I played in all 3, and it was too much.
Right.
My first and second year, it got to be when I was in Inner Geekdom mode. I played an Inner Geekdom match and a teams match in the same day one time, and that was like, it was just. It's a frame of mind. It's a way of thinking about things, and it's hard to switch. Again, like, not a machine. I couldn't just like flip the switch and be like, think about things this way or think about things that way. And Inner Geekdom, even now more than even when I was first starting in it, it got to a place where don't enter the Inner Geekdom if you haven't memorized every film, who directed it, what year it came out. That should be the first thing you do when you join the Inner Geekdom. You need to know those things across the board. You should probably throw in composer and like the main couple of leads in their names too. Like, those are things if you want to be competitive in that league, that's the first thing you do. And then you watch every single movie and you take notes on all the things that you think could be asked about. And there's clearly a somewhat formula to it. Like, you can tell, like, names of places, names of MacGuffins, things of that nature, movie quotes. Like, there's certain things you learn to be on the lookout for, but you have to watch those movies again and again, jotting that stuff down or doing however helps you remember it. And with the regular leagues, when I studied for them, I wasn't writing a lot of specific notes down when I was watching them, unless they were super famous movies for whatever reason. Most of that was just like, going at it from a filmography perspective or a year perspective, whatever you're in is to be, learning that information. And that's the part that you devise your system, whatever your system is,
And there have been a couple different ones, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I think so I know that for me, like, I'm just a fan of the Schmoedown, but even when I'm watching movies, I catch myself like this is a note that I should take for the Schmoedown, but I can easily take myself out of that. Do you all, now that you all are both retired, and I know that you all are working with your competitors as managers in a little like kind of management on the side, do you still do that when you watch movies? Are you able to take yourself out of a movie and enjoy it, or are you constantly in Schmoedown mode?
The problem is we're together. So when you get the two of us sitting on the couch about to put on a movie from like HBO or something like that, we don't immediately start it. He'll hit play and then he'll pause and go, okay, what year to come out?
I don't do that.
We both do that.
No, what the game is I put something on cable that is old to us, 70s, 80s, and I'll say, how fast can you guess what it is?
Oh, we've done that too.
That's much more common.
There are a lot more versions. There's a ton of versions of this that we're talking about.
Yeah.
He'll put on something if the movie's already started and it's like 20, 30 minutes into the movie. He'll try to guess which scene we're about to jump into the movie on if you just click on that channel.
I enjoy that game because I can play that alone.
This sounds like a podcast waiting to happen, to be honest. I'd love to watch the Rachel and Sam show as they do this.
Would the two of you ever do a podcast together talking about movies or anything?
It would be about wine and cheese.
Ooh.
We actually talked about it with Riley and Julie, our good friends, and we spent a lot of time talking movies and wine and drinking wine with them. So we've often said that we all should just drink wine and stream.
Yeah.
See what happens.
100%.
You would inevitably go into movies. The last time that we had wine and dinner with them, he had a bunch of scores on Alexa, and we were just sitting there yelling out whatever movie we thought the score was from while we're. These are the things that we do with the people that we've met at the Schmoedown.
Oh,
very nice.
I love that. That's a great story.
Well, let's get into your managing since you have dealt with that this year. Go from it like the draft. Did you have a strategy in mind right away? Did you know right away, I got to take my boy Drew and Drew?
There were a handful of moves that I knew I wanted to make. There was only one that was an absolute guarantee because I had the number one pick. Beyond that, Rachel, I have to give her credit. She worked so hard giving me okay, if this person is available, we get them. If they're not available, then we go for this person. If that person's not available, we go for and I mean, she had every different, round pick completely mapped out for me. So there was no guesswork in the moment on the day of.
I think you just threw me under the bus. Doing very well. Well, my picks apparently weren't the best.
Hang on.
Deep dive into
this was. Let me rephrase. No, not rephrase. Let me add more to this. This was a list that she had pitched me, that she and I looked at and carefully worked on before draft day.
Okay.
We had a lengthy conversation about this list. And no, I'm not throwing her under the bus. Yes, the faction is not doing as well as we had hoped, but that is not on us, number one.
Yeah, tell that to the fans.
I'm sure. And number two, look, I'm sorry, but when my number one draft pick unexpectedly, without telling me ahead of time, plans to retire and leave the game, that put us in a very difficult spot.
Yeah.
Things happen. Trades are made, and I'm very happy with the way the trade that I made worked out. But if that had been a beginning of the season thing and not a middle of the season thing, things might look very different for the suspects. And look, it's very, very, very easy to decide who is a good manager and who is not a good manager based on the outcome of matches.
Right.
There's a lot of names for that in sports. Monday morning quarterbacking tends to be the easiest one to go to. And man, oh man, there are an awful lot of Monday morning quarterbacks when it comes to Schmoedown fans. And that's fine. You guys are absolutely within your rights to go, well, turned out that was a bad move. What you're not allowed to do is go, turned out that was a bad move, and I bet $5,000 on the outcome of that because I was so certain, and here is my evidence.
Right. Hindsight 2020.
It's very easy to say, well, that worked out bad for Sam. He's a bad manager. It's not as easy to call that and put your money where your mouth is. And if anyone wants to show me Vegas bet slips from January of this year, calling how my season was going to play out, I'd like to see those.
Fair enough. Put him on Facebook, put him on Twitter, let him know. Guy retired? Because Guy was your number one to pick, right?
You said Drew.
This is the action fans, so
These are
the
action
things that
fans.
they're going to go for. Your number
Yes,
one pick.
yes. I will say this, and I have always said this about Guy since the minute I drafted him into the usual suspects, and I say this to him all the time: as many chances as he will give me. I never miss the opportunity to tell him, "You are my number one guy."
True, I can corroborate this.
Very, very nice. Very nice.
It's very hard for me to not say that the next day.
Well, actually, you brought up everything I was going to say because I wanted to know from the beginning what happened, and then again, I was going to say that when Drew McQueen retired, that's like February, wasn't it? When you retired, that just threw your whole game off. You have Ethan Irwin now.
Mhm.
Obviously, COVID happened also. That definitely didn't help either because we didn't have matches for the first, any real semblance of matches for the first, quarter or so. But now you got your big guy back, Ethan, kind of replacing Drew McQueen in that slot, so to speak. You got him the singles tournament, and he's got a match coming up against Tom now.
Mhm.
How's that going preparing for Tom? Is he Ethan seems unflappable. But will Tom's character throw him off at all? I can't see how it would, but
I don't think character work has ever been an issue for Ethan in terms of getting in his head. When he's playing against someone who's not, sort of a more straight player. And look, Tom's a wild card. Okay, he's a really big unknown. Yeah. So I will say this about Ethan. It does not matter who he is playing. He never underestimates anyone's abilities. And I think that's one of the reasons why he does so well is he treats every player, whether it's their first match or whether it's someone who's won multiple belts, with the same level of respect. And the assumption this person knows movies. So nothing's easy. Nothing is a cakewalk. And beyond that, though, the Ethan is one of these guys where studying for him is watching movies.
Yeah.
And that's what he does. This is a guy who watches hundreds of movies a year. And it's not just that he watches all those movies a year. He has a great memory. He has tremendous recall. Yeah. And those two things, I think, are what make champions. Dan Murrell is a guy who sees hundreds of movies a year and has tremendous recall. Right. And there's a reason Dan has been as successful a player he is, and I believe that is it. So studying certain ways is one thing. But if you want to be a player like Dan has been, like I believe Ethan is and has been, you got to watch a lot of movies and you have to have tremendous recall. And that's what he does. So in terms of strategy for a guy like Ethan, there's really not much I can do to help him. He does it all on his own for the most part.
And he recognizes, like you did, the at this stage, what you should be watching is the things that, you might need to work on. I mean, he's gotten an inordinate amount of animated and Disney questions.
Yes, he has. And he's been working very hard on that.
So those are the movies, that he knows that he should be.
And he's been watching them.
Yeah.
Much to his chagrin. And they are painful if that is not your genre. And I know the pain. The only real strategy he and I ever discuss is probably what to put on the wheel. And, I'm not going to give away our strategies. But yeah, that's probably the most active strategic decisions he and I have made.
Do you feel like as a manager with a player on the level as Ethan, do you feel like as a manager sometimes it's just best for you to just kind of step back and let him do his own thing?
Absolutely. With a guy like Ethan, honestly, I want to make sure that no matter what I'm doing, it's not getting in his way at all. because he's a guy who gets into a rhythm, and you don't want to break that rhythm.
Right.
Yeah. I feel like like going from a player to a manager has to change some sort of strategy inside of your brain, because you're not playing for yourself anymore. You know what works best for you as a player, but now you have to put yourself inside this mindset of what works best for this person as a player. Have you found that transition for both of y'all? Have you all found that transition kind of easy for you? Like, do you find it easier to teach rather than play, or is it sort of the same sort of thing? Do you miss playing, anything like that?
I'll say this. I think it's easier to study for yourself because, or maybe it's not, I don't know. Like I knew what my weaknesses were because they were the questions I was missing.
Mm-hmm.
But for all I know, I had a giant weakness, but it never really came up a lot. So I wouldn't know to study for it. But in working with other players behind the scenes, Rachel has wonderfully helped put together mock matches and, almost Iron Man type matches where we'll get a few of our players and we'll just sort of ask them question after question after question, covering a wide variety. And we've discovered, hey, you missed 8 of the 10 questions we asked in this genre. I know it's never come up and you might have thought you were stronger in that genre, so you might want to focus on that. And that's something that just on my own as a player without a manager or coach, I might not have ever realized. So to that end, I think I'm glad that we have the ability to help people sort of realize areas they might need more help in. And or the flip side is, hey, remember this thing you thought wasn't a strength of yours? You hit 8 out of 8 questions we asked. So if you're looking for a new wheel slice that you think's going to throw people off, we just found it.
Bingo. I like that.
I love that. Okay, and this is just for me. I'm an animation is my favorite shit. It's my thing. So I have to ask you, Sam, like out of the 45 movies that you watch, I'm not going to ask you what your favorite one was, but which one stands out to you the most? Like which one do you remember the most out of those 45 that you watched?
Which one do I remember the most? Oddly, and I don't know why, but I'm answering which one I remember the most was Monsters vs. Aliens.
That's DreamWorks, right? Am I right on that?
Yeah,
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, got the other side, though. We have the teams tournament coming up. Obviously, when you traded for Ethan, did you automatically, was that right away, I'm putting him with Andrew Guy? Or was there ever any thought that you were going to maybe reunite Time Machine, for example, because they had been a team previously? What was that thought process?
Nothing. No decisions I've made as a manager have been instant like that. I try to give everything as much thought as I can before making any big decisions like that. It was one of many things that I'd thought about doing, and I'm glad that the stars aligned in a way to allow it to happen once that was what I thought was the best play, because I think they complement each other tremendously.
I agree.
I know it would be very easy to look at Guy's last match and think, oh, I don't know, man, something's off about him right now or whatever. Anyone can have a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone. In fact, I believe Andrew's name comes up typically when people talk about anyone having a really bad day. On the other side of that equation. So, and no player should ever be judged by one match.
Agreed.
And I would never hold that match against him. So that said, I have always had tremendous faith in Andrew's skills as a Movie Trivia Schmoedown player. And I do firmly believe what he brings to the table combined with what Ethan brings to the table really is a dangerous thing. So I am very excited to see these guys in action together at long last.
It's where Guy shines. He loves playing in teams. He's been part of 2 amazing teams in the past, and and he kind of got left high and dry a little bit when McWeeny retired. So, he was so excited at the beginning of the season to be playing with McWeeny and to make a run. And they had that ridiculously narrow loss. And, so that put a little bit of a halt into it, but they were ready to go again. And then McWeeny, unfortunately outside circumstances in life, he had to step down and it left Guy hanging. But he knew with as much, certainty then as we've known about him that teams is where he's best at. He complements people really well. That's where he can do his best work as a character and as a player. And like Sam said, the best teams are people paired up that lift each other up in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. And that's one hell of a pair in terms of that. So it's, we really wanted, it's too bad factions can't have two teams, and it was like a 16-team tournament because we really wanted Janine to get an excellent partner and to jump in there too. But she agreed, Drew agreed, Ethan agreed. This was a conversation. We talked about all the possibilities, and everybody agreed that this made the most sense for the faction.
Yeah, I want to ask both of y'all about character work, because you have arguably one of the best characters on your faction, Andrew Guy, our Lord and Savior on this podcast. Working with characters inside of the Schmoedown and all of that has been a part of the Schmoedown, not since the beginning, but has always kind of been something that has been there inside of the Schmoedown. How do you all feel about working with someone like Andrew Guy who has a very distinct character in this game and trying to manage that? Do you feel like it's a factor in any sort of way, or are you just kind of like, Drew, do your thing, but make sure that you answer these questions?
It's tough because some of the players in the Schmoedown, the character work is their favorite aspect. They would be happy to not get asked trivia questions at all because they just want to live in this character in this very fun space. And with Guy, I think it's like a 50-50 mix. Like, he really does love movies and movie trivia. And he's really good at it. He is also a very gifted actor and loves, creating these characters within the Schmoedown that he lives in. So, you always hope for a good 50-50 mix, but it becomes tough if you're not having your best day as a movie trivia player. And then it can make you almost feel like, oh, well, the character stuff I'm doing, maybe it's not working because I didn't have a good game. But it's difficult because I know this comparison has certainly been made, with professional wrestling, you can put all your efforts into your character because most of the time they know what the outcome is going to be.
Right.
Of the day.
Right.
So it's one giant aspect not on their minds. Right. And Movie Trivia Schmoedown players who are doing character work do not have that peace of mind. So I think it adds a pretty large level of anxiety to some people. But honestly, last match notwithstanding, I don't think Guy's character work has ever gotten in the way of his ability to play.
No. I would agree with that. And I would say that maybe the digital format might hurt him a little bit in terms of he likes that energy of the crowd. I think he likes that energy.
He definitely does. If I can throw a baseball reference out there that maybe one person in the chat will get, or you, Paul.
I might.
I think Guy, my comparison to Guy is he's Javier Baez.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He playing in an empty stadium hurts Baez.
Mm-hmm.
That he's not a player built for that. Andrew Guy is built for live matches with a crowd where he can do his thing. And that still works in studio too, because there's people there.
Right.
As long as you give that man an audience, you give him someone to perform to.
Right.
He's in his zone.
Right.
So it's definitely harder, the digital transition. But I think for him, the game changer is going to be with Ethan next to him.
That could change a lot.
Yeah.
It's going to change a lot because it's not just him out there anymore. Now he's a duo. Now he's got someone to bounce off of with regularity. And frankly, with teams, there's just more people in the window.
Yeah.
You add more faces on that window, it's just what he needs. So
Right.
I feel good about it.
That's good. Is it challenge? How challenging has it been trying to prepare for a team? Adam Collins and Marisol McKee, rookies. Now Adam Collins is obviously on one of those big runs, and Marisol has also looked very good, only beaten by Polyama when he threw a perfect game. But they have no real game tape as far as their team together. Is it challenging preparing for that kind of team?
What do you think, chief strategist?
Well, the good news is that we're talking about Ethan, who, like Samm already very eloquently said, it's not as much about the individuals that he's playing. It's that he's just, the assumption is these are people that are going to come to the table with possibly as much knowledge as I am. So I'm going to focus on me and what I'm going to bring and how to get myself in the best frame of mind for that. And I think the same thing will be with Guy. You know, the main question that, you know, we're really talking about is like, well, what do you put on the wheel? So like that's conversations that are happening. And, you know, if you don't have a lot of game tape, do you just go with what you feel comfortable with? Or do you take a stab? Because there are wheel slices that 90% of competitors aren't that strong in. Occasionally somebody comes out and surprises you with one or two of them. But the gamble, the numbers still work in your favor to possibly play one of those. So there's a lot of, you know, talk around that. But I think that the two of them, you know that it's more important to focus on themselves and what they need to do to come and pitch the best game that they can against people that have proven that they're capable of that too. So when you're up against that level of a player, I don't think it's smart to concentrate too much on the opposition. I think it's smarter to concentrate on what you're doing to prep yourself.
Yeah. So this is a question for competitor Rachel, competitor Samm. Take those manager hats off for a second. So this digital era that we're in, like, as competitors, do you all feel like this is a completely different like battlefield that you're going through in a sort of way? And are you ready for this sort of era to be over?
You know, it's so funny. Like every player is different when it comes to this. Like if you ask Ethan, the digital way the show has gone now, it doesn't really faze him. Like he enjoys being asked and answering questions about movie trivia, whether it's in front of a computer by himself in a room, whether it's in a studio with 8 people, whether it's on stage in front of 500 people. For him, it's not really much more complicated than that. For other players, like I think with Guy, like it doesn't work for him the same way. He can't compartmentalize it like Ethan can in that way. Like he thrives. He's drunken master when he's got the crowd. So for me personally, I think I'm more like Ethan. I think it doesn't really factor in that much to me. Like I enjoy being asked the question and I'm going to answer it if I know it. And if I don't, I don't. And, you know, I think on the secondary level, like it'd be a bummer, like if I won a huge match and then I can't immediately walk out of frame and high five everyone and hug people. You know, on the flip side, I think if I lost a big match, I'd be much happier to be at home and by myself already, because many a player having lost a big match have just walked out of the studio. Not to be rude, not because they're trying to be mean or they think they were cheated or anything. It's just really emotionally tough for people sometimes when there's a lot on the line like that. All you're studying and hard work, and it's hard to take that loss, and they just need to be alone to emotionally process it before they can be sociable again. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with either of those. So for me, I think I'd be okay doing the digital at home, but I totally understand people who aren't. And, you know, I know there's a lot of people who want to get back to in studio, and I'm one of them. How about you?
Yeah, I think that given my nature and what people know about me, I would probably play fine from home. Maybe even better for all I know. It's kind of hard to say, given just my own internal makeup of everything. But even though, you know, when I started out and being in front of the camera is still something, you know, that it's even years into it would sometimes just catch me off guard and be like, this is weird. Why am I doing this? I didn't ask for this. But it's synonymous for me. I think of the Schmoedown, I think about playing in the studio because that's what I did. And that's what I know. So that's what I was prepared for more often than not. And, you know, so for me to play from home, I don't necessarily think that I wouldn't be able to answer questions, but I do think it would feel odd. And I think that, like, just not having that vibe of the murmur of people hearing the questions that you're being asked and exclaiming if you get it or don't, or the wheel spin when it hits opponent's choice, that groan that like those are part of it. Like I said, they're synonymous with it for me. And I think that for a lot of the old school players that are playing in this digital world, that's the intangible thing that we can't say for sure it's affecting whether they get the answers or not, but it is affecting the experience.
Gotcha.
And I don't know, like it's just an unknown. You can't know, you can't play the same match twice, go back in time and play it from home and then go back in time and play it in the studio to know for sure how it affects. But from a retired player, but fan standpoint and stuff, there's just something very special about the studio and us all coming together because we would shoot 4 matches. So everybody's there for each other's matches and everybody getting ready in the green room and off in their corners with their different prep styles. And then it's at the end of it, that huge sigh of like all the winners and losers and then coming together for a drink across the street. Like there is just a camaraderie and a community that I really miss with everything.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know. I mean, I think that if I was still playing, I'd be killing it, but you know.
Of course.
Killing it.
Absolutely.
We watch matches at home and we both play along, and she has gotten more perfect round ones, more perfect round twos.
None of it matters, but you know, from
she's
home,
going 100% top to bottom. It's unbelievable to watch.
You still got the muscles. That's all you need. You still got the muscles.
Damn right.
Well,
I do want to say, just like female to female, Rachel, like, it's been wonderful watching you compete inside of this. I feel like most things that I'm into are male dominated. That's just kind of the world. But so to be able to watch you and Clark and every other female that has gone inside of this league is so nice and refreshing because it makes me feel okay to be here. Like it's so random and awkward to say, but like just having that tiny bit of presence is so welcoming. And I feel like the Schmoedown has, like, regardless of Facebook and all of that stuff, but the Schmoedown in general has always been inviting to female competitors. It's always just kind of been a shame that certain things kind of push people out of it, but I just have to tell you, Rachel, like from female to female, I genuinely appreciate you being a part of something like this that helps me feel good in a space. So regardless of what other random douches want to say on the internet, just from girl to girl, I'm so glad that you're here and that you're still here, especially knowing a lot of the stuff that has happened. Like, you've been a complete and full inspiration. I just need to take this opportunity to tell you that for sure, because you're wonderful and you're great, and I appreciate you so much. So thank you.
Thank you. That means so much to me because, I mean, I've talked about it on this show and in other shows in terms of legacy. Like, it's awesome that I won 2 belts and that I was, you know, the first female to do it and everything else. But what you just said means way more because I'm old enough to know what it feels like as a little kid, as a little girl, to be into things like Lord of the Rings and hiding it from anybody but my family. Yeah. And, you know, that kind of thing is something that Clark said it very eloquently when we won the Yodi Award, like that if we can show women, girls that, there's no such thing as boy things and girl things to like and to be into and to be a part of communities and competition. And, trivia doesn't know gender or race or color, sexual or it doesn't know any of that. Like none of that matters. This is a completely equal playing field. And, it's still harder for women a lot of the times just because of the backlash from the unknowns, from the people, the keyboard warriors and whatnot. But, to push through that, I think hopefully shows other women that they can too. And that the more we do it, the less those people are going to say anything, because it's just going to become more normal that women are just as big a part of it. So thank you for saying that. And, hopefully we keep spreading that message in one way, shape, or form.
Well, it's up to us. It's up to us to do that. We got a voice here. We got to push out that very vocal minority. At that point, that's the keyboard warriors like that. But we're gonna keep doing it.
Clark's quote, "We are the league," is still something that completely resonates inside of everything that we do. So it's a big thing for us. So always thank you.
Danny, how do I follow it up with like a regular question? You know what I mean?
I don't think you can, Paul. I think that's a great trend.
I had one like ready to go, and I'll just do it anyway at this point. One more. Sam, you mentioned at one point, Sam, being emotional, getting emotional in the studio and everything else, and that also happens to be in the match itself. You're definitely one famous for challenging questions or challenging items in here. Now, this has been the year of the challenge. How has that been for you? You were the only one to challenge, not the only, but you were the big key.
The challenge didn't exist when I was doing it.
Right. I mean, you would challenge anyway, but not really challenge.
Right.
So, how do you feel this has become like such a thing this year, and the special challenges and the momentum changing challenges and everything?
We've had a few, and look, there will always be debate. I'm going to say on 95% of challenges, there's going to be a way to debate. Oh, this person shouldn't have challenged. No, they absolutely should have because of X, Y, and Z. And in my hope, and I want to give a tremendous amount of credit to PJ Campbell and all of the writers this season.
Yes.
There are too many to name. They have been crushing it. They have not just been coming up with great question after great question, but they have also been doing the due diligence to make sure that all the questions are correctly asked, correctly phrased, factually accurate, things like that. So every now and then something sneaks in there. So it's not really about the question. I think the large portion of this year's challenges haven't been about the question, but more about the answer, which I think is very, very important to differentiate from the old challenges, the ones that I used to get hung up on. I would say, well, no, you can't, because you said this movie from this year directed by this person, and that does not match up. You either a movie from this year or it's a movie directed by this person, because that didn't happen that year or whatever. So I would worry about things like that, where the question itself had a factual error and not an ambiguous answer, for example. So I'm glad that we've sort of codified what challenges are, but I don't love that. I think it needs to be more like baseball. Like, yes, each player, each team gets one guaranteed challenge. And if you throw your challenge out there and you win, you retain the ability to do that. But in baseball, if there's a close play, you challenge it and you don't win your challenge, not because you threw away a meaningless challenge or whatever. If something else comes up later in the game that is absolutely worthy of a challenge, even though you can't officially say, I'm officially challenging this, you should at least be able to say, look, everyone in the room knows that was real wonky. I'd like to urge the officials, who are within their right to say no, I'd like to urge the officials to take another look at that.
Right.
I think we need something like that, because I'd hate to think a challengeable thing in a round one question, maybe loses someone their challenge, and then for their 5-pointer, by accident, through no fault of anyone,
right,
a factually incorrect question was asked.
Well, it could be kind of like the NFL in a way. Like the NFL, on a scoring play, they automatically review it, kind of thing. You don't need to throw the challenge flag.
I'd like to think so. And I know that they're always working on things like that. And now that I'm not the commissioner, I don't have as much weight in a conversation about how things should and shouldn't be handled, or rules should or should not go. But I wish that there were a way to make sure that everything was looked at appropriately.
Fair enough.
I've never been a fan of. I'm a fan of the rule book. The rule book is something that I do think that is something that would be great for players and managers. I'm not a fan of everyone having access to the rule book. Do you feel like a rule book would kind of help alleviate some of those worries?
Absolutely. I mean, in baseball, everyone has access to the rule book.
Mm-hmm.
I think in MTS, everyone should know what the rules are. Frankly, I think it would help people to make more informed challenges if everyone knew what the rules were.
Like, for instance, like the situation, when once it was instituted and it was a known that if the title of something is a single word and there's a the in front of it, you have to include it. And otherwise it's incorrect. And that has now that that's known, because it wasn't a done deal when Janine played Chance in New York in the very first New York Live event, because I was there. And she said strangers and not the strangers, and it was challenged. But the rule had been established by a committee of people who were arguing those things. It was one of those really big pointed arguments amongst a group of people and deciding on rules at that point. And it was decided that the is important when you have a single word answer. Janine didn't know that. She didn't know that decision had been made yet. So they gave her the point. The challenge wasn't upheld because she didn't include the. If there's a rule book and those kinds of rules, everybody knows them, then that doesn't fly anymore. These are the rules. You're privy to the rules, so you can't argue that you didn't get this or whatnot in the given challenge. For the straightforward things like that, there are so many challenges that aren't really straightforward in terms, like they're like about the ambiguity of an answer given, or an incompleteness, or intonation about a question, and how that you could, if it could be interpreted in different ways. Those are not really rule book things that you can decide ahead of time what's going to happen. That's why the challenge still needs to exist. But there's rules that the saying it out loud and spelling it legibly. Like that at this point, stop complaining if you don't get something, if you don't get that right. Yes, I'm probably talking straight to Roka at this point. That's what you have to do. You have to say it, you have to write it legibly. Done. Right. Everybody knows that at this point. So you can complain and say, I knew that, I just couldn't. Well, you didn't write it, so you don't get the point. That is done at this point.
Sorry, scribble Fonda.
Very true. Well, all right, I think it's time for this or that. Second segment we do here on Chill to Action. If you haven't been here before, I will be giving Sam and Rachel option A, option B, and letting them choose between them. Some are our usual questions, and some will be tailor-made. And of course, if anybody in the chat wants to throw one in there and I take a gander and see it, I'll use that as well. Now, Rachel's been through this before. It was about a year ago, or almost a year ago or so. Almost. It's been that long. It's been on that long. But so the first question we always ask, and I guess I'm gonna alter it just a smidge, because I know Sam's got to answer one way right now. Sam's got to answer this one way. He can answer this question.
I wasn't prepped for this.
I know, but I'm audibly here. So you can answer now, but you can also, I want to know, from back in the day before you were a manager as well, as an Action Army podcast, there was a civil war that happened. Were you always Team Guy or Team Traitor?
There's only one right answer.
Well, when you put it that way.
Yeah, right?
Team Guy.
That makes
I'm pretty sure I made it very clear before. He is, in fact, my number one.
Number one. I can't wait.
Very good. And Rachel, I don't think your mind has changed since the last time we asked you, has it?
Should I play devil's advocate and say a nice word about my backstage co-host and go team Ben?
That's right. You're on backstage now with.
I kind of feel like I should stand up for him in this moment.
I mean, we've taken a couple of shots at him, which I hope he knows have all been in good
Always.
fun. But yeah, you can be team trader. That's fine. I'll sleep on the couch for a few nights. That's fine.
Let it be known that I stuck up for you, Ben.
Okay. I like that she actually didn't say she was a team trader. She's just saying she's sticking up. So that's where we're going to leave it. All right, we'll move on to the next question here. This one is for you, Sam. Singles belt or the team's belt? Which one was more satisfying to you?
Probably the singles belt. I mean, you're out there by yourself. You either know it or you don't. There is no bouncing words off of someone else to maybe accidentally arrive at a right answer, whatever. It's really just you out there. And I think that was when I first started watching the Schmoedown, that was really all I was concerned about, was winning a singles belt. I didn't even have an idea of playing in teams for months after I'd started playing in singles. So singles, the whole goal was win the belt.
Gotcha.
So that was pretty satisfying.
Okay. Rachel, same question. IG or teams?
It's a little harder for me. I agree with what Sam said, like the IG belt, because it was, where my heart was in terms of the divisions and my personal taste and having to do that all on my own. But Clark was, she's my partner in crime. She's one of my best friends and will be a friend for life. We kind of went through the trenches together. We went through a lot together to get those belts and to defend them as many times and to get them back the way that we did. Like that's, something. I think that's a bigger statement. I think that's on a personal level and, a legacy level and all there's so much wrapped up into it that I might say teams because of all of that mixed up together.
That makes sense. Okay. All right.
I didn't realize that you could see right through my chest this way because it's being blocked by our names. Yeah, I got this shirt. This was a bad, like milk. This was a bad choice.
Gotta like it. All right. How about between both you and I, playing versus managing, coaching, or I can also throw for Sam specifically, commissioning.
Oh, commissioning.
You didn't have to do a whole lot.
Stood behind
I mean, I did some stuff. But that was great. Like, do you know this is true. Do you know my biggest job as commissioner? I sat 4 feet off of the desk and actually ran a stopwatch for the 15-second countdown because I was sick of watching Christian just sort of estimate it. And no one else was doing it.
Now
now we got a clock.
Studio now.
Yeah,
right.
Somebody has to do it.
I as someone who was watching an online match go down, I can agree with time getting away from you.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. All right. And Rachel, for you, playing versus coaching?
I like coaching. I think that it might have been a little easier if we weren't doing it in this sort of digital way. Like there is sort of a removal from it. Like I'm good friends with a few players and I'm happy to do that and whatnot. But, it sort of doesn't hold a candle to the years that I was competing, though, I don't think. Not yet, anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. This one more for Sam, I think, but I'll go this way. Ryan Sandberg or Ernie Banks?
Oh,
That's all you.
that's so hard. The reason I'm going to say Sandberg is Sandberg was playing when I fell in love with the Cubs, when I fell in love with baseball. I could go to Wrigley and see Ryan Sandberg play. Banks was long retired by the time I really fell in love with the sport. So, learning everything about Banks and his legacy within the team happened after the fact for me. So Sandberg is more like a part of my childhood and a part of my very strong memories of loving baseball. But man, was Banks just amazing. That is the hardest one yet, but by a nose, it's Sandberg.
Okay, I'll get it. I empathize. I was a big Sox fan growing up, so I had an affinity for the Cubs as a Red Sox fan. We were both lovable losers for so long in a way. So
I'm going to slide in here really quickly before Paul gets his next this or that in. But I have to ask, Sam, have you watched A Kid in King Arthur's Court?
Yes.
Okay. That's
fair enough. Okay, a favorite of the podcast question: poutine or loaded French fries?
Wow. Do you want to take this one?
No.
I mean, look, I've been to French Canada. Poutine is fine.
Okay.
But I'm an American at heart, so I'm going to go loaded French fries.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Okay.
okay.
Kill Bill Volume 1 or Kill Bill Volume 2?
Kill Bill, the whole bloody affair.
The whole bloody affair. I know you're going to say that.
I cheated.
You totally cheated on that one.
Cheated.
That's fine.
Look, you haven't seen Kill Bill until you've seen it in Quentin's private screening room cut together as one long
Now
film.
you're just bragging.
And yes, I will bend down and pick up that enormous name I just dropped.
No.
Excuse me. Here it is. I've been ruined. So,
okay.
but I'll say Volume 2.
Volume 2.
You're making me pick.
Or an Ichi. You can't beat the Crazy 88s and that scene is the best scene in both movies, in my opinion.
Sounds good. All right. I got one last one I'll do, and I got you in trouble before. We'll see if I get you in trouble again. If I play it today, who wins, Above the Line or the Shirewolves?
Shirewolves.
Call that. Call that.
100%.
That's a wheel spin determination.
Real spin determination. Okay. All right.
I think four of us match each other blow for blow. General knowledge. I think that wheel spin decides that match.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
There you go, Robert Adams. Didn't vote Poutine. That's the last time I watched not another teen movie.
I mean, look, do whatever you want, but you're missing vintage Captain America there.
I do, honestly. I love that movie. I kind of really do. It's one of my favorite parody movies ever.
It's a really good one. It really is. I am so happy with how many people have told me over the years how much they love that movie, and I'm so glad that it more or less it picked up the mantle that the first two Scary movies had sort of built, and then it got in there, and then it kind of fell apart after that in terms of the sheer amount of parody films and the production quality, shall we say. Like they were trying to make those movies for so cheap. That was just a money grab. Like they were like, well, if we can make it for $2 million and it makes $5 million, then everybody wins. It's like, you can't make a movie like that cheap. I mean, not that not another teen movie cost all that much money. I think we were made for $8 million or $10 million or something, but all the money's on the screen.
Yeah, they put effort into it.
Like, there's no Randy Quaid was the biggest name in that movie.
It's true.
At the time. Honestly.
No, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right.
So, yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm so sorry that I didn't get to refresh myself on this, but like and I can't think of the damn character's name or the actor, and I feel really bad about it. The guy who was in Varsity Blues that was also in that movie.
Oh, Ron Lester.
Yeah,
Ron Lester. Yeah.
Like getting him in that movie was like, as soon as I saw him in that movie, I was like, I loved it, because Varsity Blues is one of my favorite movies ever. So
that might be the biggest name I can drop. So I went to college with James Van Der Beek and was in an a cappella group with James Van Der Beek. That's my biggest name I can drop.
What was the name of this a cappella group?
Yeah,
it's very important.
This is very. He will text him.
36 Madison Ave, because it was the address of our school. Also called Mad Ave. If you tell me, I'll send you files of him singing and you singing together.
I'm going to need these files, Paul.
I will gladly send them to you.
I showed Rachel what my text chain with James looks like, and I don't think we've said a straightforward thing to each other in a year and a half. It's constant roasting back and forth. I cannot tell you the amount of times I have sent him the Dawson crying gift. I just attach it to everything I send him.
I should definitely send you the drunken karaoke we did Billy Joel's Only the Good Die Young then as well. I'll definitely send that one along.
Okay, you've just improved my next week tremendously. Thank you.
All right. Well, that will end this or that. We are running out of time with our couple here, so please start getting your chat questions in. We will quickly promote what's going on next week in the show while you're getting those questions in. And we will get Kelsey on screen. Welcome on screen, Miss Kelsey.
Hi. Hello. Get your guys' questions. I'm excited to hear what you guys have to ask. So get them in.
All right.
So
Real quick.
while you all get those questions in the chat, make sure you get those questions for Sam and Rachel in. Streamlabs will take priority. So if you get those Streamlabs questions in, streamlabs.com/call-to-action-podcast, you will get that in first. Otherwise, get those questions in the chat and Kelsey will make sure that they put them up there. But while we're waiting for those, we are going to go ahead and promote what we have going on for the channel coming up. So I'm going to go ahead and start with Paul.
Okay, I've got Schmoebaits coming up this week. We're going to be having a Quirky Mercs themed Schmoebaits. I don't know any of the guests yet. Alex hasn't let me know exactly what's going on, but it could be a Quirky Mercs themed debate, as we've been doing a lot of the faction debates. Rachel was on last week with the as a ghost judge. It should be a lot of fun. We're also probably doing breakdowns. We usually do them for every match, at least most of the matches. So now that it's slowed down to 2 a week, it's a lot more manageable for us to do. We'll take those down. Then Saturday, we'll be doing Call to Action Live as we usually do. Break down the week, do some previews usually. Then next week, we'll have another Chill to Action. We don't have our guest planned yet. We did book 2 weeks from now. We're still dotting the I's and crossing T's on other guests. Should I announce the 2-week guest? No? You know anyone else? Okay, I will wait on that then, I guess. But we have a great guest, another legacy type, I'll say that, a legacy type player guest in 2 weeks. An old school player. That should be a lot of fun. A lot of fun for that one. But that we good. And I'll let you know as soon as we know our guest for next week. We will let you know in our chats and on Facebooks and on the Twitter. You know, all that as we always do. Without further ado, Kelsey, if you want to start getting any questions in there, let's hit it.
All right, perfect. We have a Streamlabs from PC who donated and asked, question for both of you. What's a must-have for you both for your wedding?
Oh.
Elton John on piano.
Love it.
Highly unlikely.
We're starting a GoFundMe. I believe he still does that for $1 million, although I don't know. He'll probably be retired by then, so we might need $2 to $3 million. All of your donations are graciously accepted. Thank you.
We will put the link in the description.
Definitely.
Please attach the link to the bottom.
This is all news to me.
These are surprise.
Not our fault.
We haven't decided yet, but most likely we will have either one of these as our theme or a combination thereof, but wine and movies will somehow be involved with the wedding and the theme. So we can't do that without either one of those things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It would be
And the Rocket Man.
an idea for the two of you to come out to like the Pulp Fiction like scene where like they're dancing and just do that dance.
Very nice.
All right. And then we had a question from Level 2 Trading. Were you ever on an episode of Still Standing, Sam?
You know, you could ask me that. I think I saw that question before. Is your Google broken? Yes, I was in 2 episodes of Still Standing. And that was a super fun show because Jamie Gertz and Mark Addy were the leads of that show. And, you know, I mean, I saw Lost Boys when I was coming of age. So big time crush on Jamie Gertz. It was really, really fun to work with her. She was amazing. And Mark Addy is so funny. It was such a delight to talk to because Mark Addy, who, you know, he's been a successful actor now 30 years.
Right.
He's one of those guys when I would chat with him, like, I got the feeling if at any point in his career someone was like, sorry, Mark, you can't be an actor anymore, he'd go, oh, all right. And then just find something else to do that he'd pour his heart and soul into and be great. And like anytime I meet someone like that, I'm always kind of impressed because this is such a weird business. But he was such a cool, down to earth, hilarious guy.
Mm-hmm.
Very well.
All right, and we have two people asking very similar questions. I'll put them both up. We have Brian Espon, favorite match both of you competed in, and then the favorite match both of you competed in who is not Who's the Boss.
That tends to be my go-to. But a slightly less one that I'm really proud of is Clark and I taking the belts back from Odd Couple. You know, losing to them the first time was kind of tough, and the second match against them was a battle, and we managed to to pull that off, and that was again something that nobody had managed to do before, lose the belts and then take them back. So that was right up there on my list.
I mean, I've said before, my favorite match is a match I didn't even win. It was against Mark Riley.
Right.
That was so much fun. I had, honestly, take away the studio lights, the cameras, and the audience. It felt like we were just two dudes hanging out in a North Hollywood apartment with our friends. We're like, all right, we're going to ask you guys movie trivia questions. Let's see who knows more. It felt like that to me because Mark and I, we've certainly grown a lot closer more recently than we were then, but he's just such a great dude, and he's so easy to get along with. And
you both killed it. You both were running your wheel categories. It was neck and neck. It was a really good
That
match.
was one that could have gone either way. I missed a steal, and if I get the steal, I win that match. It was the brand of beer that ET steals out of the fridge. And I was torn between Miller and Coors.
We always remember the questions we didn't get.
Exactly. Anyway, it didn't matter because I was like, whatever. It was a 50-50 shot, but I had so much fun playing. There was no pressure there, oddly, in my mind on that match. It was just a fun match about movie trivia with a great guy. So that one's probably my favorite still.
Fair enough.
All right, and we have another super chat coming in. You've been in a lot of sitcoms. Do you have a favorite?
Friends. I wasn't on Friends, but it's my favorite sitcom. My favorite sitcom I was ever on is Just Shoot Me. Because of the incredible cast on that show. I mean, there are a lot of great sitcom casts, but what I got to see in person, how they all sort of work together, how they workshop scenes, how they make sure that nobody steps on anyone else's lines, everyone gives everyone else a chance to nail their jokes, and everyone wants everyone else to succeed. That sounds like, every show should be like that, but believe me, they aren't. And that show, just watching that ensemble work together and getting to be a part of it was just one of my happiest memories on set.
That was one of my favorite shows watching. I feel like in the late 90s, early aughts, there was a lot of really good sitcom, or 90s really. So that's one of my favorite ones. I love to hear you say that. It's awesome.
Oh.
Very, very cool. All right, let's find one more.
One more left.
Yes. See, okay. This question, without getting into specifics, does free agency signing strategy change when you don't have the first round pick?
It's pretty far down the line. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have a first round pick or not. So if we're assuming that the suspect...
You gave it up when you did the trade with the Droogs.
That's true. I forgot about them.
I think it'll depend on what the drafts look like, and we'll have to be a little more diligent this year about looking into unknown rookies, a la Adam Collins.
I'm going to text my attorney and see if I can get out of this deal. Sounds like a bad one.
I love that.
Perfect.
All right.
Well,
let's go ahead and take that off the screen. Thank you so much. Alrighty. Thank you so much to everyone who has been hanging out with us. Sam, Rachel, I did not get to tell you this earlier, but if you don't mind hanging back with us for a quick second after we get off of the air, just for a quick debrief, we would love that. Thank you so much to everyone who has hung out with us tonight on this happy Sunday. We really appreciate every single person who is in this chat. Every single person who has followed us for this long, we really, truly, truly appreciate you. So, Sam, Rachel, thank you so much for coming in and hanging out with us on this Sunday. We genuinely, genuinely appreciate it. You two are legends in this league. So, thank you so much again from everyone. And also, let us know what you have going on right now.
Oh, what do we have going on right now?
Well, as you know, I'm on Schmoedown Backstage on Tuesdays at 12:30 Pacific time. So please tune in. Ben and I are working out our relationship on that show and having fun. And I also am doing a lot of episodes of Casterly Talk with Ken Knapsack and on his channel YouTube. It's all Game of Thrones all the time, which I am all about. I will be on this week. We'll be talking season 1, episode 6. So tune in.
All right. I'm on a handful of episodes of Doug Benson's podcast, Doug Loves Movies. Some that I've already posted. Some might be coming up. I don't know. So I'm in a movie that recently dropped on VOD called Immortal, which is a horror anthology about immortality. And I won't say anything more than that because I think people should check it out for themselves and see if it works for them. Hopefully, it will. Yeah, it's 4 short films, so a little horror anthology about immortality, and I'm in one of them. I think it's the last one, so I make you earn it. Immortal on VOD, wherever you get VOD.
All right.
Kelsey.
All right. You can find me at KelseyKins90 on Twitter and Instagram. You'll also find me all the time on here on Call to Action, especially Call to Action Lives. I will see you on Saturday nights. And I've been working on personal projects, but they're a little bit on hiatus because of tournament season. So I guess you'll see them eventually.
All right, for myself, at Paul_Denuzio on Twitter. You can find me a lot of times on Action Industries. I produce for Ben and Drew, doing all 3 of their shows on the weekends, and the General Debate, which we do, which is kind of it's a fun little debate show we got going on every other Thursday. Also, I will be on, I have my own YouTube channel called PLD Projects, where I've been reviewing the episodes of V, and I will eventually get to the Harris Dance. Eventually, I promise I will. One day when I go through every movie that Ed Harris has ever been in, and I make you love him like I do. Or did I try? I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see what happens. You all know me. It's your girl, Danny Joy here. You can find me on Twitter at Danny Joy, DANNDANIEEJOY. You can also find me here every Sunday with my favorite co-host, Mr. Paul Denuzio, and my favorite little lady right there, Kelsey Kirkland, hanging out on Chill to Action with Schmoedown Pro every week. Thank you so much. You can also find me on YouTube under my own stuff. Just find me. It's there. Watch the Book is coming out. I promise. Watch the Book is where I go through a movie and its book adaptation. So go and look for that. And that's pretty much it. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Paul. And for everyone else in the Call to Action crew, thank you all so much. This is an Action Army podcast, y'all. So as always, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight on this Sunday. And we salute you. Have a good night.
Find me on Cameo.
Cameo. Yeah.